Hey, I wanted to start with something that you have commented on quite a bit on the show, and that's the Ukraine-Russia conflict, because there was a sea change in things as a result of these drone strikes. And I wonder if you could speak to how that might change the conversation around the war and the war itself.
Yeah, if we could come back in 500 or 1,000 years, we would find that every war college in the world is teaching what the Ukrainians have done with limited resources against a much bigger opponent. So the Ukrainians spent 18 months figuring out, as the picture, if you're watching online, shows, how to pack crates with bomb-laden drones. The tops of these crates on radio command would pop off. They got them deep inside Russia to attack 4 air bases, one of which is in far Siberia. Probably would have been easier to approach it from the Pacific Ocean. And as you can see in the picture you have up now, there are a whole group of strategic bombers and transport planes that they blew up. Now, many of the planes they didn't blow up likely are not flyable. The Russians have not been building these 3 types of aircraft for some time, and they've been cannibalizing parts from them to keep the others flying. Clearly, if you're Vladimir Putin or a strategic level officer, a general officer of the Russian military, you've got to be absolutely terrified that this is not a one-off, that they're going to do this again. Now, the Russians have arrested some people who may or may not have been involved in this. If you were one of the drivers of the trucks that had the container in the back, you will undoubtedly be suspect to the Russian government. You may get shot, but may have had nothing to do with it. But this was a brilliant move. And then in addition, they've now managed to seriously damage, I don't know if they brought it all the way down, the key bridge that connects Crimea with the Russian mainland. And of course, in 2014, on Obama's watch, the little green men with no insignias showed up in Crimea. Putin went, but I don't know anything about those people. And then once he had control, he went, of course they were my people. And Obama didn't do much because he couldn't get Congress behind him, both parties. Couldn't get them behind him to be much more serious about this. But Ukraine is demonstrating to the Russians again and again, we can hit you, we can hurt you very badly, don't misjudge. I think you also should expect that soon there will be major missile attacks on Kyiv, Lviv, Odessa, not Odessa, but Kyiv, Lviv, and some other Ukrainian cities by the Russians. And keep in mind that all the way back to the era of the czars and the boyars, who were the aristocrats, that the Russians have never respected the law of war and the rules of war. They have always attacked school children, hospitals, homes for the elderly and disabled. And you should just expect they will continue to do that because the culture doesn't have any respect for the notion that there are legitimate and illegitimate ways to wage war. And of course, all war, as I think it was Dwight Eisenhower said to us, but if not, George Marshall, one of the other World War II generals, all war is a crime.
Sure. But as you say, the history of this war is replete with examples of war crimes on the part of the Russians that are pretty heinous. Here's Tony, who says, David, do you think Trump is actually faking his rage against Putin and giving Putin more time to conquer Ukraine?
I think that I'm not sure if he's doing that, but Donald is being played by Putin just brilliantly. Putin learned a long time ago how to flatter Donald, as I did when I was talking to him, several times a week. And Putin's game here is time. Time is on his side. Now, there's been another development in this, by the way. The leaders of the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, have been saying for at least 12 years that the Russians plan to invade us at some point. With the election of a right-wing leader in Poland this week, there's renewed concern about this, and apparently there's some Russian traffic on state television that's pretty bellicose towards these 3 states. An expansion of the war along those lines would definitely involve NATO. So Putin is got to be hoping that he can go after a minor NATO country. The U.S. won't get involved. Well, the British, the French, and the Canadians will get involved. That they've made that very clear.
It also seems, David, like an inopportune moment for him to do that. That kind of expansion on your military is already stressed. You've detailed before here about all of these things associated with a military that is diminished immensely. I mean, you talked about the pole carts and the donkey carts, and how they're. It's almost medieval the way now he's having to fight this war in some ways, and so to expand to another front, that would seem like it might be a bridge too far.
It would be. But that doesn't mean it won't happen.
Okay.
The very closing days of World War II, when anybody realized the Germans were going to be defeated and the Western Allies and the Russians were both racing to get to Berlin first, Hitler ordered that the theologian Bonhoeffer be hung, and he ordered that one of his generals in the field be brought back to see him. And they had to divert, I don't know, a dozen, 20, some large number of fighter planes as an escort to safely get this guy back. And then when he got there, he just spoke to him, said nothing of consequence, and sent him back to where he was. You might think of what the position Putin is in as being analogous to very poor people who do not have enough money, no matter what. Doesn't matter what decision you make. Every decision is wrong. There's actually what's called the poverty game. It's an exercise that's carried on in various places to show people how awful it is when you don't have nearly enough money. And when you do that and every decision is wrong, you make lots of bad decisions. And I think there's a very good chance we will see Putin making increasingly bad decisions, likely to be lethally bad for Ukrainians and perhaps officers who, in the view of Vladimir Putin, haven't performed for the modern Tsar.
That's a great way to characterize it. Wow. It really does sort of, you have to gird yourself for what may happen in the days ahead. All right, I want to turn to domestic stuff and this big beautiful bill thing. I mean, again, it's got the branding of Trump. That's sort of the gilded branding of a big beautiful bill. It's so classic Trump. But embedded in it, in addition to all the deficit bloating parts of this bill associated with the tax cut, there are aspects to the deregulation and also the bulletproofing of the executive. So the judicial, the thing that's slid in judicially is he doesn't have to, the president, respect any kind of injunction. You can't essentially enjoin any sort of executive order of his. And there are other things like that embedded in this bill.
Right. So this bill is economically damaging. The numbers from the Congressional Budget Office, this is Congress's own staff telling them this will reduce economic growth, increase the deficit, raise interest rates. Donald lives in this happy-go-magic land where I just say it and that makes it true. A number of Republicans, particularly ones who are not in deep red territory, have begun to realize that they could be voted out in 2 years or 4 years. That's 2/3 of the Senate over 4 years. And so some of them are speaking up about provisions in this bill. And the bill also doesn't have things Donald promised. Donald said that people like me would not be taxed on our Social Security. Yeah, that's not in the bill. There is no tax on tips. Well, that's going to make the income tax system even more troubled because right now the minimum wage for, unless you have a state law to the contrary, the minimum federal wage for restaurant and bar waitstaff is $2.13 an hour. And that's been in place since 1993. So it's now less than $1 an hour in real terms. And the rest is made up by your tips. Well, how are we going to police and report tips? And why wouldn't I say, I'll just work for tips? What's the $1 an hour? And so that's one problem. There are numerous other ones in this law. But the core thing to watch is that what Donald is trying to do in firing inspectors general, in rewriting contracts, in leaning on the government in Gambia and 3 other African nations to give contracts to Elon Musk's Starlink under threat of losing all the U.S. aid they're getting, which isn't that much money, by the way. We're talking about a few $100 million. There's less than $1 per American. All of this is designed to make sure there is no accountability. That's what dictators do. That's why I've been saying on this show since February 26, Donald has declared himself our dictator. And I've been warning since 2011. That was always the goal, to be the dictator and not to be beyond review. And now we have multiple reports of Canadians coming to the U.S. border who are being asked, do you support Donald Trump? And people who say no have their passport stamped denied entry 4 years or denied entry 5 years just for not saying that they support Donald Trump. My 7th child, who's a lawyer in Canada, was just here to visit. She just left, got across the border a few minutes ago. Her wife did not come with her because Molly is a dual citizen. Her wife is a natural-born Canadian citizen. And Molly believes there's a very high risk she'll be stopped at the border. If we go to visit them near Toronto, we will take burner phones or a burner phone because they're searching your phone and searching your laptop. They are people who show up because they're compliant with the law for their court hearings on asylum claims. The Trump administration tells the administrative law judge, who is part of the Trump administration, these are not Article 3 judges who are independent, these are administrative law judges, that they are to dismiss the asylum claims, and then they arrest mom or mom and dad. They've deported a number of children who are U.S. citizens. And technically, they haven't deported them, they have rendered them.
Well, we were talking the first half hour, David, not to interrupt, but just about that this honor student on his way to soccer practice. He's been here since he was 6 years old, and he was just scooped up. And the government says, yeah, he actually isn't on our list, but we stand by the detaining of this guy. I mean, and
they don't make mistakes. No, I mean, this is something that Roy Cohn, back when Donald Trump was a very young man, taught him. You never made a mistake. You stand by whatever you did. And of course, the only mistake that I know of in the almost 40 years I've known Donald that he's ever admitted to was one I predicted. He said, the only mistake I made was I should never have left in January of 2025, 2021. And I had predicted he wouldn't leave peacefully, and he didn't.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that a window on the future too?
Yeah.
So I like that you mentioned the culling of information or the reviewing of information on laptops and phones, et cetera, because it's a good kind of segue into this thing that concerns me so much, and that's the new government contract granted to Palantir, that digital and data collection service, as they now, and they already have huge contracts with the government. I mean, they're approaching $1 billion to help with homeland security. And then there are all of these different contracts. If you add them up, it's like $1.5 billion. And now the new one is to centralize all the data on Americans across federal agencies. So we all have breadcrumbs that lead to a profile of ourselves, right, across all of these different federal agencies. And now they're saying, we want Palantir, this huge, powerful data collection service that's already helping with illegal immigration, et cetera. We want them to compile a file on every single citizen in America based on all this information that's out there.
You can tell from my gray hair, I'm old enough to remember when Republicans said we can't have a list of people who have gun permits because that would allow the government too much surveillance power over us. Not hearing a word from the NRA or everybody else about what they're doing. But clearly what they're doing is they're building a surveillance state. Now, in a lot of ways, we're going to have a surveillance state whether we like it or not. I mean, it was more than 25 years ago that Scott McNeely, the founder of Sun Microsystems, said, you don't have any privacy anymore, get over it. But there's a big difference between lots of cameras on the street where you have no expectation of privacy and collecting your IRS information, your W-2 information from Social Security, your licenses of any kind, your passport information, and putting it in a database. By the way, a database owned and controlled by an African immigrant named Peter Thiel, who, like Elon Musk, is from South Africa. And this is all setting up the dictatorship. And I don't see the hair on fire coverage I would expect about this.
Thank you.
It's namby-pamby. It's very polite. It's, oh, what are they doing? What does this mean? I think it's plainly obvious what it means, and a whole bunch of people who understand authoritarianism. Sarah Kendzior, who's about to have her first piece in DC Report, by the way.
Oh, that's great. She's been on the show a couple times. I love her.
Yeah. Sarah, who, along with the three professors at Yale who are going to the University of Toronto, they are among the most insightful and deeply informed about authoritarianism and how democracies are taken over. You add into this the election of the pro-Trump, basically, president of Poland, who won by a very tiny margin. And I think you're going to see Poland, which, remember, is the country the Nazis put most of their crematoria in, sliding back to become a fascistic authoritarian, or at least certainly an authoritarian state, undoing the progress that had been made towards decency.
Yeah, think about just recent history. I guess it's not so recent, with the rise of a democracy to the freedoms that they fought so hard for in Poland. And now you saw that same thing happen in the Netherlands. The Netherlands also going a right wing, right, David? I mean, they're all struggling.
Well, maybe.
Well, go ahead.
I'm not sure because the leader of the far right party broke in the coalition with the government.
Right.
And so the government has to have a new election because it's a parliamentary system. But I don't know enough about that election to tell you whether that means they're going to the right or not.
Nor do I, probably, but I will say they've made a lot of political hay of the immigration issue. I mean, that's a big winner in Europe, right?
Yeah.
And so when you look at the monies spent here, hey, can you play for David, Tony, the Christy Gnome back and forth when she's questioned about the money that's going? It's with the Democrat. I've just spaced who it is. It's not this piece. This is the Elon Musk thing. I'll play that for David as long as you have it up. Oh no, you got the other one now? Tony's so good. He's yeah. I want you, just because we're talking about immigration. Here's a little bit with Christy Gnome, and then I'd love to get your reaction. Here we go.
About the cost of the wall, the billions of dollars that are going to be put forward. We do have to have accurate numbers so that we could look at that for funding it. But I would hope you also take a look at all of the cost of a wall, because there are a lot of other secondary kinds of defenses you have to put forward. I was at the wall. I've been with security folks. They tell me that a lot of the cartels have designed very sophisticated technologies to get over the wall. They're called ladders and they're called ropes. So a wall doesn't really do the job if there's not a lot of other background technologies there. So you just can't put out a cost for the wall. That's money that's not going to be as effective without everything else. So let's have a discussion about that. For the first time in U.S. history, the federal government, at the direction of President Trump, is moving immigrants apprehended and detained in the United States on civil immigration charges to Naval Station at Guantanamo Bay, which I know you're very familiar with. In March, I traveled to Guantanamo Bay with several colleagues to have a firsthand examination of the detention operations underway. And I certainly have serious concerns about the cost involved there. To date, can you tell us the total cost for detaining individuals at Guantanamo Bay?
You want the cost per individual?
Do you have that?
I do not have that with me today, sir. I can get that for you.
Well, I do have a number. Do you know how much it costs to hold an immigrant in ICE detention facility in the United States? Do you have that number?
Now, are you talking per day? 100 and I believe the last estimate that I got was $142 a day, around in that approximately, per day.
Yeah, but it's close to what I'm understanding. I understand it's $165 per day, so it's in the range. I'm still waiting for detailed financial information from this administration from my time to Guantanamo Bay. In fact, a letter with Ranking Member, or Chairman Paul and the Ranking Member together, we wanted more information.
Okay, good. Tony, I can stop there. This is about money mostly, right, David? But it speaks to the way that they are throwing up figures and making up figures and just pulling figures out of their rear.
I'm surprised Christy Gnome didn't say, I don't know, more than she did, because that's become a standard. Donald Trump does it all the time. He doesn't want to answer questions. I don't know. You need to ask somebody else. And of course, we know he's not taking his daily briefings, and they've been talking about how to redo the daily briefings as a mock television show in the style of Fox News so that he'll pay attention. Because and of course, the reason he doesn't take them is that Donald is so appallingly ignorant that the things in a presidential daily briefing would be meaningless to him. It's, oh, why do I have to sit here and listen to this? I have no idea what they're talking about.
Well, David, sorry to interrupt, but this is such a fascinating story. We did talk about it late last week. The fact, maybe it was yesterday, that they are now desperate to reconstitute the way that they do the presidential daily briefing, because he's taking so few of them. He's averaging one a week, and that might be generous in the way you look at those stats. So he's basically not taking briefings, and she, Tulsi Gabbard, it's been leaked, looking for ways to, as David says, put together a video with an anchor who looks like they're on Fox News Channel so that he'll watch that. And they're trying to include his name more, and it's lunacy, David.
Well, because he doesn't know anything, so it doesn't mean anything to him. As opposed to Barack Obama, who wanted more briefings, more information. There's long been, under various presidents, a rule: a presidential memo shouldn't be more than 2 pages. And Obama, according to his science advisor when I interviewed him, literally would say, I'm going to need 14 or 16, 20 more pages on this. And he would read it and he would speak later, because he's got a brilliant, very agile and sophisticated mind, and he could understand all of this stuff. Whereas Donald is just not capable of doing that. But one of the strategies here is, I don't have the numbers, I'll get back to you with the numbers. And then why would we believe the numbers? We know when they were holding, the last time we got a thorough report on the few remaining people from 9/11 being held in Guantanamo more than 2 decades later, that the cost was, millions of dollars per year, because it's a tiny little strip of Cuba that we have rights to historically. I don't know how long, when they run out, if they do. And you have to fly everything in, you have to maintain the soldiers there, you have to rotate them in and out constantly. It's craziness, and this is going to continue. There's not going to be any regard for spending money.
Right.
Christy Gnome's department has been spending money beyond their budget. Another senator brought that up. The senator you saw in the clip is the senior senator from Michigan, and he's long been steeped in issues about government spending, and they're just they'll make up numbers, they'll withhold numbers, they'll deny them, they'll do whatever's in their interest to avoid accountability.
And as you say, that agency, DHS, that she heads, is bleeding money. It's incredible. And of course, the one thing that they're doing and spending money on is this media campaign. I mean, they carpet bomb the air of particularly Fox News Channel with these ads. But it's not just Fox News Channel. They're buying network TV, they're buying digital to show Christy Gnome, to show the ways in which they are rounding up these illegals, et cetera. And to me, David, that's associated with building that brand. We're tough on immigration. It's almost like a campaign ad on an ongoing basis.
Well, and the reason they're buying ads or public service announcements is very clear. It's because they don't have to worry about any pushback. There aren't going to be any nosy reporters asking questions. And so when the New York Times breaks this story about Elon Musk and his heavy drug use, and he denies that that's true, and then you find out, well, there are videos where he admitted this. There are videos of him where you can see he's clearly loopy and on drugs and doing bizarre things, just as you can see, all sorts of videos of Don Jr. under the influence of something. I mean, it's widely reported to be cocaine. I don't know what it is, but clearly he's under the influence of some psychotropic agent. And they don't care. They're not going to be consistent about anything. It's about power, unregulated, uncontrolled, unaccountable power. That's all it's ever been about. And sadly, tens of millions of Americans, if Donald says something, that's the truth. That's God's truth.
It's truly it's a cultist kind of thing. In my last minute with David, I want him to see that Elon Musk tweet and just get his reaction. That's from the piece I just sent you. Here we go. Just take 30 seconds. Go ahead.
I think President Trump is going to be when he finds out that Elon Musk said, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it."
Look, the president already knows where Elon Musk stood on this bill. It doesn't change the president's opinion. This is one big, beautiful bill, and he's sticking to it. Tamara.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's, but interesting to see all of a sudden Musk biting back a little bit, David, you know?
Well, all relationships with Donald come a cropper at some point because it's a one-way street. I don't think it's over, especially if my theory, and it's only a theory, that Donald is financially beholden to him over his civil cases in New York, more than $600 million now with interest in 2 separate cases. But it is bizarre that the Republicans are constantly saying the national debt's going to ruin the country, and they want to add billions of dollars to the national debt to lower the taxes on people who already have so much money, they can't even gamble it away. And that's how rich Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and a few of the others, Bill Gates, are. Even if they went to a casino and gambled at the highest rate they could, like the guy I observed in Trump's casino years ago, Akio Kashiwaki, gambling at the rate of $14 million an hour. I'm sorry, if you got more than $100 billion in the remaining lifetime you have just gambling, you can't possibly lose all your money. There's no utility there, as an economist would say. But that's not what it's about. It's about, we're going to live regal lives and you are going to pay for it. And you're so dumb, you don't even know what's happening to you.
I'm glad that we got to some stuff today, David. There is, you know, they're serving up issues that I want to ask you about, like a short order chef over there in Washington and more. But we'll wait till next time. Thanks so much for your time. I look forward to next week.
Take care.
All right, David K. Johnston, everybody. Love it. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.